Hello, welcome to Human Tech, a podcast about the intersection between humans and technology. My name is Guthrie. I'm here with Susan. Hey, Susan.
Hello, Guthrie. How are you?
Man, I am doing well. So we have been on what can only be described as a long hiatus. Very long hiatus.
That implies we were on vacation.
We were on a podcast hiatus. We were busy working. We've just been working the entire time.
Working.
Working. So we should probably do just an update, a grand update, and then we're going to talk a little shop. I feel we've noticed some things as we are now into year 2 of the pandemic, which,
What?
I don't know. It doesn't, probably not going away anytime soon.
Oh God, don't say that.
But at least.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah.
The way that we work, the way teams are being structured, the way
that probably won't go away.
Yeah, and so now that it looks like have you ever heard of this idea of corporate memory?
Well, I mean, I talk about corporate memory, but I'm not sure you're talking about the same thing I'm talking about.
There's a thing called institutional memory is what it's called, and it has a lot of economic benefits. So when the pandemic first hit, everyone was laying people off. The reason the government jumps in and does, for example, in America, the PPP Act, which was basically if you kept people on payroll, you got money. The thing is that there is value to people like being in a job, knowing a role, being in a team. There's a memory beyond an individual, but that an institution has of a way it does things. And you can't just reinvent that overnight with new hires.
I have a story about that.
Okay, well, I'll explain it and then you could tell your story. Okay. So this big thought is that the goal then when economic downturn hits is to try to reduce that as much as possible so that then when the business comes back, you're not starting from scratch. And many sectors, unfortunately, didn't heed this advice. So in the United States, tons of trucking companies, seeing there was a pandemic, fired all of their great truck drivers. And now, of course, they can't find people to replace them, and it's a whole mess. With that said, just because there is an institutional memory doesn't mean that can't change. But it takes time. So you're not going to do it in a month. You're not going to do it in 3 months. But 2 years of remote teamwork might start, and if we start going into year 3, we might start to see more permanent changes in how teams are functioning. And that's sort of the shop that we wanted to talk about. So go ahead and tell your story.
Oh, well, I had a situation where I was facilitating a group meeting in Arizona for a large financial organization that I will leave nameless. And this was like mid and upper management. This was a long time ago, so definitely pre-pandemic when we all met in person. And they had like these quarterly meetings, and they invited me to come in and give a talk on user experience and all of that. And so as part of their meeting. So there were maybe 20 people in the room, and I gave my talk, and then we were having a pretty long Q&A and discussion about user experience at this company. And one of the people said, well, why don't we have a dedicated user experience team at our company? And several of them were like, yeah, why don't we have that? And I said, well, you used to. And they said, what? I said, you've actually had 3. Over the last 15 years, you have had 3 different dedicated UX teams. And I started to talk about it because I had worked with all 3 of them. And they did not have institutional memory about this because of what you were saying. They were constantly doing reorgs. There was a lot of they had a pretty high turnover rate at the company in general. There were always people coming and people going and people moving around. And none of the people in the room who had been there quite a while, these were not all new hires, none of them even knew or remembered, the institution did not remember, that they used to have a team of people to work on user experience. I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
I was their institutional memory. That was scary.
I mean, it's a good story.
It's happened to me a lot, though, that I'll be talking to somebody and say, yeah, I worked with you guys a long time ago. And
in a galaxy far, far away.
Well, yeah, but they really don't have any records. Like all the work that was done, you know, the personas that we did, the task flows, who knows where it is? They didn't know. So it's a lot of research and work, and that gets wasted that way, you know.
So okay, so let's and so that's sort of a summary of some of the stuff that I'd like to cover today.
Okay.
I want to start with a very quick recap of what we've been doing. Just like 2 minutes, 3 minutes.
Is this so that you and I remember, or to share with our listeners?
Gotcha.
You mean to share with our listeners?
Yeah.
Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
No, you go first. You go for it.
So
you got to start. Let's start you want to start we got to do like the last 18 months.
Whoa.
Well, because we
that's a long time.
Well, we've only done a couple podcasts, and the podcasts we've done have mostly just been like guest podcasts that have been about other topics.
We haven't been talking a lot about what we've been doing. Okay, what the heck have Susan and Guthrie been doing for the last 18 months? Well, I took a long nap. No, not true. As you said, we've been working a lot. Well, I'm just doing this. I don't have any prepared notes or anything. Maybe I'll remember what I did for the last 18 months. We have been doing, surprisingly, I don't think we thought this was going to be true, but we've been doing a lot of workshops and speaking engagements, which we thought would disappear during the pandemic, and which did disappear in terms of being in person, but did not disappear. And they all switched to, and we got a lot of new ones, all virtual. And we've been doing an awful lot of those. So some of them are like, a 2-hour workshop or a 3-hour, but we've done full-day workshops. We've done workshops that are normally 2 days long, but we've broken them up into multiple days of 2.5 hours each that get done over, a 3-week period. We've, like I said, lots of keynote talks. So that part of our business has stayed really strong. So we've been doing a lot of that. We've been doing what we call staff augmentation, meaning we've been interviewing and bringing on board different people as contractors who then, because we have a lot of clients who need a lot of work done and, like everybody else, are having a hard time hiring necessarily full-time staff, or they want some flexibility in how much staff they have at any one point. So we've been helping them by providing them with contractors. And then the other thing that I think is really interesting, our consulting work has actually increased, but I find the consulting work that we've been doing really fun and really interesting. We're doing a lot of mentoring work and, helping people within an organization grow and learn more and do their work more efficiently, more effectively. And we've been doing a lot of what I consider strategy work, UX, either design strategy or research strategy with our clients, helping the whole team be more effective, increasing the impact of the UX research and or the UX design team inside the organization. So, and you've been involved in those. And so that's been kind of fun. But and then, on top of all that, some of the time, we've been continuing to work on our books and online training and things that are not directly, work for clients.
Right. Yeah. So,
did I cover everything?
That was a pretty good summary. I wanted to go fast. I didn't want to, belabor it forever.
Did I belabor the point?
No.
Oh, okay. Good.
But yeah, you didn't belabor the point. It's more like I just wanted to give a sense of what we were working on so that people could kind of understand the context by which we're going to talk about. I don't know, the UX and the consulting world in a time of remote work.
Shop talk.
Shop talk. Hashtag shop talk.
Okay. All right. So how do we do shop talk? Because I'm not sure exactly what this means. You said you wanted to record a podcast episode and have it be shop talk. And I said, okay, but I'll be honest, I don't know what we're doing.
Well, let me give you a question.
Thank you.
So the first question I have for you is, how can you do UX remotely and still have it be good? Is it better? I recall the reason I ask if it's better or easier. For example, we have a client who needs to for user testing, user studies, recruit a very rare technical. They have a very rare technical user group.
Yeah.
Just highly technical, rare people to find. And it was very hard to find people. Even recruiters would have trouble. And because of the remote nature of everything, they went to LinkedIn to try to find stuff. And it's been the easiest, cheapest way. They've been recruiting people left and right like hotcakes there. So is there any benefit to having UX teams not be remote?
Yeah, I mean, there's benefits. Oh, not be remote? Be in person? I mean, there's benefits and there's disadvantages. So I think some of the things we're missing, if the work that we're doing is all remote, there's definitely things that we're missing. And so some of those, I think, are, I'm a fan of collaborative design. I'm a fan of getting the stakeholders, the development team, the UX people, the product manager, the product designers, the visual designers, all in a room, and we're going to take the next 3 hours, day, 3 days, 5 days, if you're going with like the Google Sprint idea. But we're going to take this period of time and we are going to hash out the design of this or that or this part of the product. And I mean, I've been doing that type of collaborative design work for a long time, and it's effective. You get everybody together in the room, you hash it all out, you sketch, you design, and then you document afterwards, and you make really good progress. It is not the same doing that online and remote. And the reason is that you can do some of it. Certainly you can have a meeting and have everyone there. And yes, you can have, like a Miro or a mural whiteboard thing, and everyone can be writing on the whiteboard and so on. But you can't write on the whiteboard in quite the same way. It's still not the same. And you just can't bring everyone. People are not going to sit and work collaboratively online that way. You can't do a 3-day sprint. You can't even do a full day sprint. You can't even do a half-day sprint. They have so many other online meetings scheduled already, and it's just, you just can't sit in front of a screen like that for that long. So I think we're losing that capability, and I think that's hindering design. So that's one example. Do you want me to give you another one, or do you want to comment on that?
If you have another one loaded, go for it.
Yeah, I have another one, which is, sometimes the things we are designing or working on, or sometimes the things we need to do research on, like getting feedback from users or do a user test, are things that combine the physical world with the digital world. So you can do user test or get user feedback on on a software, right? You can have the person load up the prototype and run it, and they can do that remotely. That's no problem. But what if you need to do it on a mobile? Okay, then you're simulating the mobile on the computer screen. Not the same thing. You're not there with them seeing how they're actually using the mobile device. Or let's go a step further. What if what you need to test or research is a combination of doing something, for instance, on your phone while interacting with the real world? We need to see if people will use their phone in the store in order to get more details about the product, but they're going to use their phone to look up the details online. Yes, we can simulate that, but we can't do it in the store because we're doing it remotely. So I've had in the last 18 months numerous situations where we're doing a combined physical digital and we have to simulate it, but we can't do the actual physical digital. And that, I think, is a real disadvantage. And what we're finding is when we now, because some teams are starting to do things more out in the real world. And so they've been maybe planning and working and doing some testing remotely for a year, and now they're starting to do, meet with real people out in the real world, and they're finding, oops, like a bunch of our assumptions about the physical space are way off, and now they're going to have to back up and do redesign. So I think it's harmed, it's going to mean rework, and it's slowed us down. And I think I don't see a way around that in the long term. There's some things I think you need to do in person.
I think one of the other, I don't want to say worrying things, but I wonder if people in our audience can what's the word? Not commiserate.
I don't know. I'm not sure what you're trying to say.
It's the word when you feel the same as the person who's talking. So it's not fine.
Empathize?
Yeah, yes.
What happened to your brain today?
Oh my God. This is, I go, we go a bunch of months without a podcast and I'm 100% rusty. I don't even know how to talk anymore.
All right. Empathize. That's the word.
Yeah. Commiserate, empathize, something like that. With this sentiment. I mean, I know a lot of people in the industry generally do sort of feel like UX is sometimes, shuttled off into a closet somewhere, and they're sort of like, okay, go play, go do your thing, have fun. Okay, we'll see you in 3 months. Bye. And they, whereas, the dev teams are the ones that are actually, in the main room. I know there's a sentiment amongst UXers out there that maybe their work isn't valued by their organization to the same extent as other teams. And one of the things I'm worried about is now that we're remote, I mean, I think for a lot of people, there was the developer planning, production, marketing meeting on Tuesdays in the morning that the UX person could show up to, could be the voice in the room, could be, hey, here's a 5-minute update about, what they're doing. And I do worry that with this sort of, I don't know, there's even almost more silos now because everything's remote, that it has really made some of the UX team and work even more invisible.
Yeah, it's interesting what you're saying. I wonder if there's a difference between, you know, I mean, when you have a meeting at corporate, you know, in the office, I mean, it's still a formal meeting that has to be set up because you got to see what room's available and all of that. But somehow these online meetings with the calendar and the invite, it somehow seems different. I know I think I've had situations where, you know, if I had just been in the building, someone would say, hey, why don't you drop by? You know, what you're saying. Or even not a meeting, right? Just, can you come by and talk to me about this? And now it's like everything has to be a formal, right? I mean, you can't just drop by, right?
Right.
You're either invited to the meeting or you're not, because you need the link to even get in. It's not like you can just go to the meeting room.
You got to be invited, and everyone is so busy because there's so many online meetings.
Right.
They take so long.
I know. So, and it's not like you can just drop by someone's desk or, you know, run into them in the cafeteria.
Or half people are at the office and half the people are at home.
Yeah.
And people come in a day or two.
It's complicated. Yep.
So that is definitely something that I worry a little bit about. And I'm not exactly sure how that can be overcome.
I think we have become more used to working alone now. And, you know, some people like it, some people don't like working alone. But it seems like it, and I'd love to hear from some of our listeners on this, because I've talked to some of my clients on this, where it's like, I don't know, why should I go into the office unless I have a particular meeting? It seems like a weird idea to go now into a building in an office, but then work alone. Right? It's like, if I'm just going to be working alone, I might as well just stay home and do it. Like, why am I coming into the building? Because I do that at home, work alone.
And you're really one to speak on this, because, I mean, you drive hours every day to get to your office.
You're being sarcastic.
She works from home.
Because you know that I've worked from home, and I've worked from home. I mean, I've worked from home for a long time, and even when I had an office building for my office, it was 6 blocks away. So, yeah, many years ago, I did a lot of commuting, and I understand commuting, but I am very happy that for many years now, I've not had to commute. Although for many of those years, I did a lot of traveling, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, but not daily commuting. Did you know that in one research study, but this was from quite a long time ago, I mean, maybe like 10 years ago, when you looked at factors that made people the most unhappy about their work situation and their life in general, at the top of the list was commuting.
I think that's pretty obvious.
People really don't
loves their commute.
Commuting.
Who's out there like, oh my God, I wish my commute was longer. I need 45 minutes each way. 35 is just not long enough.
Although there is an interesting thing for everyone now who has experienced not commuting. There's an interesting phenomenon where you don't get any more, or often don't get, transition time, and that creates its own stress. So it used to be that when you did commute, even if it wasn't a long commute, there was this transition from I'm at work, now I do my traveling, and now I'm at home. And during that transition...
Go to the bar after work with friends.
No, not even that. Just sitting in the car and listening to the radio, or being on the train and, you know, watching a video or something. You had this time period where you could make the switch from the work persona to the home persona. And if you don't have that, if your transition is I open the office door and go into the living room, or maybe I don't even open the office door because I just work in the living room, and so now I just put my laptop down and go into the kitchen to make dinner. Without a transition, it can often be jarring, and you can find yourself having a hard time letting go of work. So I'm with my family now. I'd like to interact with my family, but I'm still thinking about work because it was only 30 seconds ago that I was working. So one of the things I recommend to people is you need to give yourself a transition. So if you are working from home, do something in between the work time and the home time to provide that transition. Go for a walk, do a short nap, go meditate, just do something that then becomes that transition, even if it's just for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing I'm going to try and avoid is just to avoid this becoming another, work from home podcast.
Okay, fine. I'll be quiet.
No, that was good. All right. I want to stay on the UX.
Go ahead. What do you want to do next?
my next question to you then, because we could do the working from home and the brain science of that.
But everybody does it.
Well, I feel like we've done it. Maybe we haven't. I don't know. I don't care.
Go ahead.
So
you don't care.
The next question is, when we're talking about then, sort of UX teams working as we move into the future. When we're doing user testing, when we're planning our personas, should we start, when we think of people using software, using an app, using a professional thing, I think our mental model is still a person in a suit at the office.
Well, nobody wears suits. Does anybody wear suits?
Oh, I went to law school, so like all of my friends wear suits all the time. But okay, business casual. Sorry, right? Like when we think of like an engineer, right?
Yeah,
they're on at the work site measuring stuff,
or they're in their office.
Should we start thinking about mental models of consumers and professionals in sweatpants, with their kids running around in their living room? How do we... I mean, should this be a permanent change that we start to take into effect? How can you account for this when we're dealing with user testing? Because there's the user testing of the product the way it was envisioned, which was without a pandemic and without people working from home. And you don't want to do all this user testing for something that's temporary, But how should people navigate this slippery
It's a good question.
Ground?
I think part of designing or evaluating or researching the user experience is always to include the context. It is, and you are right. I think the context of depending, of course, on what the thing is that you're designing, but I think there's a lot of software and apps for working people that are being used now in a different context than before. And even if it's, it might be temporary, right? We might all end up back at the office and in the nicer clothes and without the kids running around. But we don't know. There's, trends say maybe we'll keep working at home at least some of the time. And it doesn't matter whether we do or not. Right now, that is the reality. So if you're designing something that people are going to be using within the next 6 months, I think you have to take context into account. And, we know that context matters. And we know that if there are distractions, that changes how people interact with the product. We know that, if now they're interacting on a laptop or a mobile more than a big desktop with a gigantic monitor because they don't have that gigantic monitor at home all the time, that might change our design. If there's noise in the background, or if our app produces noise, that might be problematic. All those things matter. So you always have to take context into account.
Yeah, I mean, I just the train. I mean, I'm sure people on the podcast will hear if you listen closely. The train rumble by as I am in my condo near the train tracks.
Yeah.
And that's, something that I don't think Microsoft Teams necessarily was thinking of when they designed their noise suppression algorithms. That people would be working from home. And
Or your daughter yelling, "Daddy, Mama." or the dog barking, or the cat meowing. You have that.
I am amazed. Yes, for a little inside baseball, there's a very old, sort of disheveled cat named Mr. Steve who wanders around. And he's very large and has a very large personality.
In your condo.
In my condo, yeah. And he basically just does whatever he wants at all times. And so right before, he has the loudest meow
he does.
Of any cat. And so he was just meowing constantly for lunch. And so right before this podcast, I had to, normally if I'm working, I can just be working. But because I'm, working from home, I have to strategically plan his lunch out.
He has trained you very well.
Yes. So now he's asleep on the bed,
out the
so
headphones
I can do a
on the mic.
podcast.
You get the headphones and the microphone out, and he's like, "Oh, he wants me to be quiet. I'm going to start making lots of noise, so he'll give me the treats to shut me
I need a larger place with a dedicated recording room because. So I finished up, for those of you who don't know, the entire ethics certificate and the behavioral economics certificate. Those are up and published at course.theteam.com, or the fundamentals are on YouTube. And, it was like I'm at the end of an 18-minute segment that I'm just crushing. That's really complicated about these really tough concepts. And I'm doing the big sort of finale, and right halfway through the finale, it's just
the cat?
God.
Yeah.
No. So anyways, the joys of working from home.
Yes.
So here's another question for you about the UX teams, because this is sort of working pretty well.
Okay.
Do you think this changes your opinion? I mean, I know this is going to be organizationally specific, right? So I don't want to say that that it's going to be the same everywhere. But there is a little bit of a battle between a dedicated UX team or UX people sort of embedded within other teams.
Yes, that's always been true.
Either in legitimate structure, right? So let's this is the marketing team, but we have a marketing person who kind of specializes in UX and does some of that stuff, even though they're part of the marketing team.
Yeah.
Or in unofficial structure. So technically you're part of the UX team, but all the meetings you attend are just the dev meetings with the developers. Yeah. Right? You're sort of put on a team as the UX person. Versus, okay, we have 8, usability professionals on a call, and we're working on all the different projects that we're working on. Do you think that this sort of new world of the way teams are being structured favors or disfavors one way over the other, either the more embedded in other teams or the more, just the UXers all by themselves? Or is it just totally up to the organization and the specifics probably haven't changed?
Well, I think this embedded versus not embedded, that conversation or discrepancy or contention or whatever you want to call it has been around for a long time and is still very much with us. Although I think there have been some changes recently in that. I don't think, I could be wrong, that it has anything to do with the working remotely versus not. So I don't think the remote work versus not remote work has changed that. But I think it is changing for other reasons.
Okay.
That's the mystery answer.
Okay. But you're going to say what the other reasons are?
If you want me to, I will.
Yes.
So Okay, so I think there are two trends going on fairly recently that are affecting whether UX people are embedded or not embedded. And one of those trends is something called continuous discovery. And I'm actually going to be, I'm currently working on a presentation about this for a client. And I'm going to be talking about it within the next week or so, 2 weeks. There is this whole movement, and this comes out of product teams and product management. There's this whole movement to do research continuously. Now, that sounds like a great idea to me, but there's some interesting twists to it. So, we know that, agile teams and continuous delivery of products, that's a big thing. It's been around for quite a while. Very, very, very popular. But now what's happening is research and getting feedback and doing user tests and doing user research and UX research work has become a very good idea. It's become extremely popular. But in the continuous delivery world, they now are using the term continuous discovery, meaning that we should be continually doing research, which I think is a great idea. Now, I have a lot of problems with the plan of this. That is another conversation we can tackle or not tackle. But let's just say that although you might think that this would mean that you'd want a UX person embedded in the team because you want them to do continuous discovery or continuous research, it's actually not true, really, because the whole continuous discovery thing is coming up because the teams want to do the research themselves. So they don't want to embed a UX person because they just want to do it. So that actually is making them think about UX less embedded rather than more embedded. So that's one trend I'm seeing. The other thing is, let's talk again about user research. UX work, right? There's a lot of different kinds of UX work. There's UX design, there's UX research, there's UX strategy. I mean, there's a lot of things that might be part of this thing called working on the user experience. And for many years, the biggest piece of that was, I think, UX design. So, they wanted someone to work on the design of the product or service from a UX point of view. And the designers would often say, well, before we do all this design, we should do some research. And for a long time, in a lot of organizations, the UX, who does the UX research was maybe not separate from who did the UX design. The designer would do the design and they would also do the research and the user testing. But what's happened in the last 2 years is the whole world of UX research has just exploded. And I remember, Guthrie, and you may remember this, not that long ago, we had to try and talk clients into doing more user research. It's like, you guys really should do some user testing, and you really should do some upfront work to make sure you understand your target audience, and that you got to, maybe we should do some customer journey maps, or maybe we should do some task flows. And, it was like we were trying to get people to do it, and they were like, oh, really? Do we have to do that? And now it's like, right, what's the most requested position we have for our staff augmentation right now? It's research. It's just exploded, and I think that's great because I love user research. But that means that I think it has moved us again, away from an embedded UX person and more towards having a central research group that, I'm this project over here in the organization and I need some research done. So I turn to the UX group and say, do you have someone who can do research for us on this project? So they're not as embedded. You, of course, can have a UX researcher embedded, but I find they tend not to be. And so I think we have a trend away from embeddedness, if that's a term. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. There's pros and cons.
Yeah, I mean
that was a long answer. Sorry.
Well, it's good. It's good. I mean these are like kind of the tough structural questions. For sure. Okay, so was there any other aspects of remote stuff that you wanted to touch on?
Let me see. Totally fine. I don't think, nothing that comes to top of mind. No.
Okay. So the next sort of just little mini section here, I think we have time for one or two more small things.
Okay.
So when we're talking about hiring in the United States, it's a pretty tight climate.
Yeah. There are more positions than there are people to fill them. Right?
Yeah.
What about it?
Well, is it worth trying to go out and hire UX people? Or if you need these roles filled, should you maybe focus on training people who you already have in other departments and getting maybe less of an expert but more of a generalist, and having sort of a lot of we know people who are in the UX field but did not start there. And it's people who are just they have a toe, they've dipped a toe in, and now they're doing some UX stuff, but they're sort of novice, but yeah.
Okay, I have opinions on this. The answer is yes and no.
Schrodinger's opinion.
Okay, so it's always been true. It's always been true that you've had an option of taking your internal people who know your products and services, who maybe have some really deep, complicated subject matter expertise, right? Which can be very helpful. So you have this extremely technical medical. You create medical devices, and you have these people who know a lot about the medical field you're in, and you can take them, and if they're interested, they can get trained and become UX people, or you can go out and try and find a UX person who has that medical device knowledge, right? I mean, that's tough. So there's always been pros and cons of taking your internal people and having them go into a UX role versus hiring a specialist. I guess what I would say about that is that over time, the body of knowledge and skills that are necessary to understand and do in order to be a UX designer, in order to be a UX researcher, in order to be a UX strategist, that body of knowledge has been growing. There is more that you need to know and be able to do than was true 20, 30 years ago. So certainly someone, I think almost anyone or many people can learn to do it, but it is a lot to learn. And so if you're going to train people from inside, you really have to have a plan for how are you going to train them and what is it you're going to have them do. And, what are some specialties that you might still have a specialist, a UX specialist, do if it's needed. So I don't think anymore, I don't think it's a good idea to just take someone who is interested in UX and, has been has read one of my books and now is going to be the UX person. I mean, they're going to need more than that. And I think that's one reason why we're doing so much mentoring, right? Is that there are people who are doing that. But having said that, there are a lot of ways to learn. There's a lot of excellent UX certificate programs, and I'm not just talking about ours because we have one, but there's a lot of university. I just recently worked with one of our clients to take a look at all the different programs that were out there to help her decide which one would be best for her. There's a lot of different programs that you can take just one or two courses, or you can take several courses, and they're university type courses, and you can do them online, or you can earn a certificate, or you can even get a master's degree. So I think there's ways to learn, and then I think if you have a mentor who will help you get experience, maybe someone more senior in the company, I think you can put together a plan to do it. But I would not just take someone who says, I like this, I'd like to do more of it, and then plunk them in and have them do it. I think you're going to get, I think it's going to be overwhelming for them, and you're not going to get the most efficient UX advice that way. Mm-hmm. That's kind of my take on that. And so you can go either way. I do want to say there are now a lot of master's programs in human-computer interaction, and so on. And so there are a lot of really good people. And Guthrie, we know because we interview a lot of them for our staff augmentation business. There's a lot of really good people coming out with a master's degree, some of whom also have some work experience, some of whom don't. But, if you're looking for, if you want to hire someone who maybe, isn't super experienced, but you'd like to grow them into it, I think you got a lot of people to choose from. I mean, that's where I would tap people, is people coming out of those master's programs. There are master's programs all over the U.S. and other parts of the world too, in HCI, and you got some talented people who do. They may lack a lot of real world experience, and you're going to have to mentor them too, but they have that basic knowledge and skill set that's really, really useful.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was a very complete answer.
Oh, I guess that's good.
I don't have any more questions. I think we've done enough.
So you mean the prosecutor is resting his case? Is that
the prosecutor rests his case, Your Honor? I yield my time.
Now, you've been asking me all the questions.
Well, ask me questions. You can ask me
questions. Well, I don't have
any
any specific questions, but do you have any thoughts on any of the stuff we've been talking about? Because I've been doing all the talking. I'll put you on the spot.
Well, about which part?
About any of it. No, you were just asking questions and then doodling on your piece of paper while I answered. Right? Yeah, see?
No.
We have proof. All right, I won't put you on the spot.
No, you can put me on the spot, but usually I don't even know where to start.
Yeah, I don't know where to have you start either. What do you think? All right, I'll put you on the spot. What do you think? Can you name one thing that you think will not go back to the way it was in terms of work? That one change that this everyone working from home, that even when people start going back into the office, this one thing will not change. This has been a permanent change.
Well, I can only talk about the it's not like a. I can only talk about kind of where the median person is. How's that? Right? Because there will still be people who do X and people who do Y.
Yeah,
exactly the same.
The median person.
I think work attire has changed. I don't think it's. Maybe it'll claw back to business casual, but I think the level and effort that people are going to put into their appearance going into the office the medium has moved. It's it's not even business casual.
Yeah.
It's just what's one step beyond casual? Business leisure. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Yeah.
You know? I'm not, and that doesn't mean it's not nice. It's just, like if a tux is over the top with embellishments that are unnecessary. We've just moved a couple steps back.
It's been interesting to watch over time, right? I think when we all started to do all the, remote video meetings, I know for me personally, I was wearing my sweatpants, but you wouldn't know that. And then, for above the waist, which would be on camera, I was wearing my usual clothes, right? The stuff I would wear if I were coming into your office, which for me might be, a nice shirt and a blazer or something like that. And then, like everybody else, over time, that just came down a notch, to where we got to, as long as it was a nice looking T-shirt, that was all right. And I know what you mean because, I go in now. I started going back teaching in the classroom because I teach once a week at the University of Wisconsin, and I know I've notched it down to where I used to wear all my usual business wear, and now I'm not showing up in sweatpants, but it's definitely a notch down. So I think comfort. Comfort, which was always a big deal to me. I think you're right. It'll be interesting to see if this sticks. And then,
give you a few more.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so that was one.
Yeah.
I think there is a work-life balance thing. These things are pendulums.
Mm-hmm.
In the 1800s, 1700s.
I wasn't around.
There like your profession was your life.
Mm.
You were a sharecropper. You lived on the land that you worked.
Mm.
You had a family farm. You lived on the land that you worked.
Mm-hmm.
You were a member of a guild. You basically, if you were a blacksmith,
mm-hmm.
you lived where the blacksmith was.
Mm-hmm.
Or you walked down the street and back, and you just you're just working all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And who you were as a profession, that's who you were as a person.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like if you were the royal executioner, you weren't, playing, soccer on your afternoons off. Like that was that's who you were.
Right.
And then the world became more corporatized. Corporations demanded a higher level of work. The laborer had more options. Back in the day, if you weren't working 12 hours a day, you might starve because it was the 1600s and you're working the land, right? That's not great. But, in sort of more modern societies, you might not have to work as much and you could still be alive. And so this sort of started going too far. People started feeling like they were being exploited. And you have the workers' right movement in the early 1900s that on purpose, most of the big tenets of the workers' rights movement was to put up a wall. Well, it was worker safety, but also to put up a wall between work and not work.
Yeah.
So, the idea of a 40-hour work week, that you will only work a certain time period and then you will not work. Yeah. And those are separate things. But even before the pandemic, those lines have been getting blurred. Checking emails at home, always being on call, thinking working on the presentation late at night, even if it's just in your head. It became harder and harder. I think most people who work salary jobs, that's sort of how companies skirted around the 40-hour work week is, just make them salary. And then they just work an indefinite amount of time.
Right.
Just work all the time. And the blur between the two started creeping closer. And people started working more from home. Again, maybe it was just checking emails, but there was sort of I'm not done. I'm not off.
Right.
And I think mentally people weren't turning off.
Right.
Which is maybe even more important, is I'm literally leaving my work at work and not bringing it home. So, harder to do when you have computers everywhere. A little easier if you are an architect working on drafts in the 60s and literally you need the drafts that are in the office to do you can't do it at home.
Can't bring it home, yeah.
And now, of course, you just pull up your CAD files and you're off to the races. So this was becoming more of a blur. And I think the pandemic accelerated that trend as we move back towards the work and home and my home space and my workspace. The only difference, I think, is that because of the labor shortage, I do think we've taken a little bit of a step where the worker has a little more leverage. And so, yes, I'm working from home because I don't want to go into the office. I don't want to commute. I want to spend more time with my family. And I want more control over my workplace. I don't want to work in a cubicle. So it's this weird sort of détente where the businesses need people to work more, and they need to work more at home, and the people want to work more at home. And so they're working more from home. I'm not sure that the strict division where the government passes we have a 35, at least in the United States, I can't speak to other places. We have a 35-hour work week now, and once you're done at 4 p.m, you put down your laptop and you literally do no work until you come back in Monday morning. I don't know if that's necessarily coming back. Does that make sense? Yeah.
So you're saying we might end up with a worse work-life balance?
I don't know. It's different, for example, is it a worse work-life balance if you choose to work from home to spend more time with your kids and to avoid your commute? Isn't that a better work-life balance? Even if you're working more hours, but you're
I don't know.
Working when you want?
I don't know. I think
that's sort of the question.
It's complicated. It is complicated.
It has to be a better work-life balance if that's what people are choosing, right? Usually a worse work-life balance means the company wants you to do stuff. I'm doing it, but I don't want to do those things.
Yeah.
So if we're doing the things that people want to do, I think by definition that's a better work-life balance just because the worker is assuming it. But it's just interesting, this sort of pendulum shift back and forth. And especially as we get into a gig economy and people are, contractors and have their own businesses or have side businesses, I know it sounds weird. It's looking a lot more like the Gilded Age when it comes to work. It's work. I guess that's a little complicated, but it does, there is the, sort of
more independent
independence and less of a reliance on a giant multinational corporation that's structuring how everything works and where the headquarters are and what the dress code is and when you work and how you work
and when you have to be on campus.
Yeah, exactly. So I find that fascinating. And what drew people into the office back in the day, by the way, which everyone forgets about, is that there were a lot of perks to working in person. they made it worth the worker's while in a lot of cases, especially in more intellectual, higher paid positions. When you got started in your career, what did business travel compensation look like?
I don't know.
As a consultant, what would they pay for?
Well, I mean, I pushed them, but yeah, I mean, I remember when I worked for another company, they assumed you were going to travel on Saturdays and Sundays so that you could do billable work on Mondays through Fridays. And the fact that you lost your entire weekend because you were traveling, they didn't care, and they didn't pay you for that time. So I don't know.
That's pretty rough.
Yeah, that was not good. Yeah, I think things are changing. We'll see if it sticks. I think the work-life balance is a big deal right now and is complicated. And for some people, that means not having to go into the office. But for other people, working from home might make the work-life balance harder. I don't know. I think it's complicated. But I am very curious to see what happens as we move forward.
Okay.
All right, Guthrie, we've managed to use up our entire allotted time, which we always do. And if people want to get hold of us, and if you guys have any comments on any of these things, please do let us know. What is the best way to get hold of us?
I can email info@theteamw.com. Just get in touch with me.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, check out some more free courses. Courses.theteamw.com.
Yeah.
Thank you, Guthrie. Anything else we should plug? No, I don't think so. I'm glad to be back on the horse, off the wagon, and on the wagon. I don't know. Right. I don't know which one it is.
And hopefully we will do some more. We probably can do some more frequent podcasts because, we're coming up into the holiday time, and which means all of our clients go on vacation, so it might free us up.
Okay. Thanks for the chance, and I hope everyone has a great sort of holiday.
End of year time.
And,
yeah.
Glad we could record our podcast. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.